Good morning. Today is a Saturday again, and so we're gonna finish looking at the book of Nehemiah today. Combined today and tomorrow's readings, and then on Monday we'll start with the book of Esther. Tomorrow we have worship with communion at Mabel and Sutton. You're welcome to join us in person or live, either one. So today, as we look at these final 4 chapters of Nehemiah, the people have read the law and they have signed a covenant that's what we ended up with yesterday. We made a firm agreement in writing. The people all signed this agreement, this contract, so to speak, with God. And so then in chapter 10 really names a lot of the names of the people that have signed the covenant. And then in verse 32 it starts out, we lay on ourselves the obligation to charge ourselves a yearly 1/3 of a shekel for the service of the temples. So this temple tax is now becoming obligatory, mandatory. That they would, it always had been voluntary, but now, it's the obligation now that of each family to do that. And I know there are church bodies that, they'll say, you need to contribute this amount of money or this amount, whichever. And, they'll send kind of almost statements of, this is how much you owe us. We don't do that in Mabel, basically our offerings to the church in today's society for most churches are, you give what you deem you want to give. And but anyway, it goes on that way. And in verse 37, it talks about, bringing to the chambers of the house of God. And the chambers in the temple were storage rooms. Rooms for, storing up grain or different things that were brought in as gifts to the temple, as gifts for the work of God that way. So the chambers of the house of God were, kind of storage areas that way. In chapter 11, it goes on with more of the people. The leaders of the people lived in Jerusalem, and the rest of the people cast lots so that 1 out of 10 would be able to live in Jerusalem. Everybody couldn't live there. So they cast lots, which was, a biblical way of determining a lot of things. They did that with Matthias, the disciples did, to elect the 12th disciple again. And the Roman soldiers did that with, they cast lots for Jesus' tunic, that way. And so it wasn't unheard of that way. But so only, 10% of the people, they said, then would be able to live in Jerusalem, and the others would live in the cities surrounding Jerusalem in this area of Judah. And so it says, and then we go on with the list of the leaders, a bunch of names again that, just get my mind going. I don't even try to keep track of them. That. So, talks about Benjamites and Levites and this and that. And then when we get to verse 24, this is just a little bit of interest. It says, Penthathiah, the son of Merhezabel, the descendants of Zerah, son of Judah, was at the king's hand in all the matters of the people. He was the king's stool pigeon. He was at the king's hand. He was reporting to this, to the foreign, and reporting on the progress and everything that way. So, kind of one of those people that is within the community, but is telling everything that's going on outside. And then chapter 12 talks about the priests and the Levites that are there again. It talks about the dedication of the city wall. The wall has been completed, and they have a dedication service for the wall. And that starts in, the first 26 verses continue more of the names of the people that are there. And verse 27 starts with the dedication of the wall. And bringing, the singers and the harpists and all of the musicians and everything going on, the priests, and it says the priests and Levites purified themselves, and then they would be able to purify the people and the gates and the wall. So the Levites needed to be purified before they could, be of service. And I understand that. You just, you don't, if you are, if you're filthy dirty, your hands are black, and you don't want to be cooking food for people. You want to wash your hands, and this was the purification, was more or less the washing of their sins, the cleansing that way, according to the rituals that God had appointed through Moses. And they went out through the different gates of the city, and dedicating the wall and making everything right that way. I'm going to talk a little bit more about chapter 13, because remember at the start of Nehemiah, talked about how every once in a while Nehemiah will throw in a little prayer. And I haven't mentioned too many of those, but in chapter 13, as Nehemiah returns to Jerusalem, he's been gone for a little bit, but they read from the book of Moses, and they come back, and in verse 4, before this, the priest Eliahab, who was appointed, had made provisions for Tobiah. And Tobiah is an Ammonite. He's a foreigner. And so the foreigners, it starts out in, that the foreigners, the Ammonites and the Moabites, should not enter the assembly of God. There were, even in Jesus' day, there were certain areas of the temple that a Gentile would be able to be. But most of the temple was reserved for Jews only. And so here, this person has made he's taken stuff out of one of the chambers, one of the storage rooms, and made this available for Tobiah, this Ammonite, this foreigner, to be in there and to be set up, and when Nehemiah returns, he is upset by this. It says, verse 8, I was very angry and threw all of the household furniture of Tobiah out. He was living there, in the temple. He says, I gave orders, and they cleansed the temple and brought back the vessels of God. And then, verse 10 and on, he talks more about it. But then verse 14, all of a sudden, just boom. Remember me, O God, my God, concerning this, and do not wipe out my good deeds that I have done in the house of God and for his service. And then the next part talks about more of the sin. I saw the people of Judah, stomping grapes, treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in grapes, and other people were bringing things into Jerusalem on the Sabbath, and they were buying and selling, and this was not supposed to happen. The Sabbath was a day to keep holy. It wasn't for buying and selling. It wasn't for working. It wasn't for making wine. It wasn't for doing all of that. And so as Nehemiah comes back, he says, what is this evil you are doing in profaning the Sabbath day? And so Nehemiah sees to it then that the gates, the Sabbath started at sundown on Friday and then went through sundown on Saturday. Saturday was their Sabbath. And it started at sundown, and this was why Jesus had to be buried, taken down from the cross before the Sabbath began, before evening. He couldn't wait till the morning of the Sabbath, and that was work. So, but Nehemiah then saw that the gates were locked and guarded so that these foreigners couldn't come in and do their selling and stuff. But the first few times that this was done, these people still came, and they waited outside the gates of the temple, or outside of the gates of Jerusalem, wanting to get in and to sell. And then here again in verse 22, boom, remember also in my favor, O God, and spare me according to the greatness of your steadfast love. So he's talking about all this other stuff, and then just there's a quick little prayer. And several of you have commented on your little prayers and of how sometimes, we don't know the words to say. And there's a story about a little girl that was, as she was praying, she was reciting the alphabet. And so was asked, well, what are you doing? She said, well, I don't know what words I need to use, but God knows how to put them together. So it's, our prayers can be short, simple, heartfelt, and as I know that there were comments of, so often I don't know what to pray, but God knows what's on my mind. God knows what we need, and we do. So these little short prayers are excuse me, good reminders for us that way. And then this right after that, it talks about how he sees Jews, that have married the foreigners and stuff. And again, this is not what you're supposed to have been doing and everything. And we end this chapter again, verse 29. Remember them, O my God, because they have defiled the priesthood, the covenant of the priests and Levites. Again, so here he's speaking directly to God. And the very, very last words of this book again, remember me, oh my God, for good. It's just so many times in this last chapter. I mean, I don't know what there were, 4 or 5, several of them anyway. Just short, brief prayers that Nehemiah lifted up to God in that. Again, just a reminder, when we have issues in our lives, and I've got some friends that got some making some really hard decisions and stuff, and as I visited with a person on Thursday, it was I need to pray about this and decide what to do, and that's one of the things we do is we take all of our cares and our concerns to God, knowing that He cares and will give us direction. May He lead you and guide you today as always.